Good evening, this is DeBarra's spoken word, and I'm introducing our special guests for tonight, who's just shown her Oscar winning video film, Latrina Vox. And that's a collage of texts she found in ladies' toilets. And I'm told, but I don't know, that men's toilets have very different texts, but this is a very interesting insight into the secret thoughts, wishes, fears, etc. of people using the ladies' toilets, whatever their gender. Lauren is extremely good at mixing different genres and at initiating projects. She's also one of the founders of Lime Square Poetry. She is our special guest tonight, and I give her the floor, and I hope you will enjoy her poetry as well as the flash fiction workshop that follows. Lauren O'Donovan, all the way from Cork City.
Great, thanks Moza for that double introduction, and just want to say thank you so much for all the work you do. There is a team at DeBarra's Spoken Word, of course, but Moza is absolutely the mastermind behind everything and the organizational queen. None of this would be happening without her, so thank you very, very much. And I'm very flattered by your nomination for president, but I'll have to turn it down because otherwise I'll have no time for writing. And I'm finding that hard to fit in as it is. So, and I just want to say hi to everyone here tonight. I see lots of Lime Square poets here and lots of friends from the Poetry Collective and from college. So it's really great to see so many familiar faces. So I'm just going to do a short enough reading for you. I won't bore you too much. I thought that I might really inflate my ego and read from some of my published works in 2021, because I just wanted to say that sentence. You know, I'm going to say it again. I would like to read from some of my published works in 2021. And as I said, I won't keep you too long, because I think between the workshops and Lime Square Poets, you've all probably heard all of these already, but hopefully they will stand up to a second listen or a third listen or a fourth listen. So I'm going to start off with The Wild Way. So this is a sestina, sort of, because a sestina is meant to finish with an envoy, and an envoy is meant to sum up what the point of it all was for you. And it's not a talent of mine getting to the point. So I thought my version of a sestina won't have an envoy. We'll just leave it up to the reader to decide what the point is at the end. This one is called The Wild Way. And it's dedicated to my mom, Leon, from whom I get my love of the ocean. My cottage can hear the midnight ocean tide bringing jetsam, seaweed and shells to submissive miles of fine white sand, bound by water, dune and sky. Winds blow doubt from my soul. In the emptiness before dawn, I am alive. Ballyhaig is asleep, but I am awake to hear wisdom whispered by the ocean, while her white-cap angels strip my soul to redress with sea foam and oyster shells. Under dark clouds performing dawn sky, I walk alone on wild West Coast sand. Mermaid toenails sparkle in the sand, half buried and dead, but in my hand alive. Tiny nacre caves capture suns from far sky to sink their purple flames in Mother Ocean. But the oyster catcher and shell collector have other plans for lost aquatic souls. In my cotton bag where plastic has no soul, jingle iridescent petals plucked from sand. The tinkling chimes sing, shed your shell, surrender self, connect to life. I submit and join the dancing ocean in adagio chasse beneath a bouquet sky. Wet Strand reflects the birth of morning, interrupted by another early soul, a local breaking day beside her ocean. She stops me as I bend to pick the sand. I share that again I am glad to be alive, and on his grave will grow a rose of shells. She says it was these selfsame shells Mammy sought beneath alongside virgin sky. Still young and soft and to the top with life, they foraged baskets full of shellfish souls and ran home barefoot over rocky sand dunes with willow-wrapped gifts from the ocean. Thank you. And a shout out to the Poetry Collective under Matthew Geeden, who helped me workshop that poem. And also to my gang at college who we worked together to publish the Disposable Stories this year with stories and poetry and nonfiction from my cohort. And next up, because it's wonderful reading from a book, I've got two poems for you from the Ovale 5 Words this year, which is great fun. If you don't know about the Ovale 5 Words, it's a competition that goes on every year, but every week they do a 5 words challenge poem. And then once every year, they print it all up in a book. Recipe for a sonnet. If you wish to write sonnets like Shakespeare, you first need to pull random words from air. No, first you need a glass of wine or beer, only then fortuitous words appear. Like lasagna or golf ball or bluebells, but avoid nouns like purple or orange, and make sure you count up the syllables or you'll end up with nonsense junk like anti-disestablishmentarianism orange. Next, you must rest with thoughts contemporary, like does 14 lines rhyme with moonlight? Then work A, B, A, B, A, B till you're crazy, and fume posy till you starve for fresh breath. But let's face it, no one here is Shakespeare. Most of all me, this sonnet has made clear. So the words in that challenge were lasagna, count, moonlight, breath and fume. And then another little one from the same. The words of this one were weeds, ground, purple, circle, and witness. What's in a name? A weed is not a weed until someone decides, indeed, this is a weed. A virtueless, valueless weed, just creating a mess because it grows in this recess or that circle, reserved for the overdressed, like the royal purple hyacinth or the tresses of a peach climbing rose. But the truth is, everyone should know, the only difference between a weed and a rose is the place it grows. Thank you. Now, next off, I have two from you that were published in a New Ulster in June of this year. And both of them were inspired from, I was doing a course in mythology in college. So there's lots of mythological poetry. And this one is about the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. So he's the one who went into the afterlife to get his love back. And he was allowed by Hades, but he wasn't to look back. If he looked back, bad things would happen. And what did he do? Of course, he looked back and he was not able to get his love out of the afterlife. A letter to the underworld. Another rejection letter. So many submissions, each one rejected by response or silence. If I can't get published in a local magazine, how will I convince Hades and Persephone to listen to me? I need a chapbook, at least, maybe an award, or at absolute minimum, a shortlist on my CV. I'm learning guitar, D, E, A, C, but without F and B, I haven't even mastered the key of G. I tried to buy a lyre, but Amazon is restricted because of Brexit. Perhaps I'd get by with a 4-string ukulele, much more manageable, but the tone might be too jovial. I've been practicing not looking back, wearing horse blinkers and a belt of ropes hitched with stake. I run by stray dogs. Race for your life, always forward, no matter how close the teeth and growls. I drop the belt and vault the fence. The dogs are getting fat. I know it's not easy. You never liked shadows. The asphodel meadows sound pleasant, but boring. Network with fury. Tease of the famous poet come to visit any day, now pending invitation. It's all about the marketing. Do some research on Persephone's favorites, but don't mention pomegranates. Thank you. And I should have mentioned that Orpheus was like a poet, you know, songwriter, poet, musician sort of character. So, and this next one from a New Ulster is the Steadfast Heart. I actually wrote this one out of the workshop that DeBarra's had with Matthew Geeden about surreal poetry. So I was reading I actually forgot the name of it right now. But yes, it was reading more mythology, and I thought it'd be interesting to try and do like a found poem, a surreal poem, where in the text just pick out all the nouns in a row, and could you make sense of that? Would that make a poem? And I took some experimentation, but I really like this one. It's another myth of entering the afterlife, the underworld, to try and communicate with a loved one, or to bring a loved one back. The Steadfast Heart. The open mouth of the cavern, the darkness of earth, the lonely night and the gloom, the phantom halls, the unreal kingdom, the grudging light of the wavering moon, the woods, the sky, the creation of color, the outermost entry of Orpheus, the mind, the threshold, the iron cells, the gateway, the 100 hands, the hydra, the monster of Lena, the cloak, the sails, the dead, the banks, the bodies of high-souled heroes, the first chill of autumn, the deep sea, the cold of the season, the stream, the shore, the surly boatman, the sandy brink, the uproar, the souls, the dark water, the long-lived priestess, the gods, the Stygian mere, the buried, the grave, the longed-for stream, the honors of death, the captain of the Lycian fleet, the wind of the south, the helmsman, the stars, the stern, the mist of the waves, the thick darkness, the mist of the ocean, the shores of Italy, the helm, the tumbling seas, the terror, the sea, the blustering wind of the south, the boundless plains of the sea, the crest of a wave, the shore, the rough top of the cliff, the waves, the winds on the shore, the light of day, the heaven's sweet breath, the goddess, the priestess, the fearful stream, the furies, the name Palinurus, the grief, the earth, the journey, the boatman, the waters, the silent woods, the land of sleep and of drowsy night, the Stygian ferry, the watchdog of hell, the throne of our king, the chamber of Dis, the Amphrysian seer, the bloodless ghosts, the lowest darkness of Erebus, the anger, the worshipful gift, the branch, the bank, the boat's long thwarts, the gangways, the mighty Aeneas, the ferry boat woven from rushes, the stream, the grey sedge, the shapeless mud. Thank you very much. Now, the last one that I actually have printed out is the poem in the Echo. So not everyone here is from Cork, but the Evening Echo is the local paper to Cork. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the height of international fame to have your picture or have anything at all in the Evening Echo. So I was really thrilled when they printed this poem. It's a poem, it's a found poem. So I was interested with the hashtag not all men conversation that was happening after some, brutal attacks against women. There was a lot of conversation online, and women were saying, basically we have to do all of these things to keep ourselves safe. And some people were saying, well, it's not all men who are bad or attackers or whatever. And then the women were saying that, yes, we know it's not all men, but there's enough of some men that, all women do need to worry about this. So there was kind of a lot of debate going back and forth. I was very interested in it. So I Googled, like advice for women to stay safe, staying safe at night, advice for, getting from the car park to your work in the dark, this kind of thing. So I looked up a lot of those articles, and I was amazed at the type of advice that was being given to women in order to stay safe, out in our environment. And let's just say, I don't think that there are similar articles necessarily for men. So it's definitely something that's very interesting. But anyway, look, I'll stop talking about it and I'll read it out. Not all men. Wear men's clothing at night. Wedge keys between fingers. Avoid eye contact. Stay in well-lit places. Text when at home. Say Susie to bar staff. Send license plate info. Spit DNA on attackers. Put men's boots at the door. Keep hands free to defend. Avoid wooded areas. Share GPS data with friends. Don't stop to help. Don't lead him on. Don't bus or train alone. Don't drink too much. Don't expect immediate results from police reports. Don't use headphones. Watch what you wear. Pretend you're on the phone. Don't put down your drink. Never walk alone. No, not all men, but all women. Thank you. Now, so I just have one or maybe two more for you, and then we can kind of move on to the workshop. So this poem was accepted to be published in the Cork County Council Library and Arts Services Poems from My 5km. So the task was to write a poem about, you know, within your 5km, we were locked down within our 5km. So it was meant to be something that, you know, some experience, some new experience in your locale very close to you, something to do with the lockdown and that time. So I wrote this poem. It's called Super Value Cargoline. She looks at me like only a 3-year-old can. Why don't we go anywhere anymore? I take a breath, moderate my heartache. It's that silly sickness. Silly sickness, she echoes. Black mask for me, rainbow confetti for her, through the back entrance by the pharmacy. They stare as if I've brought a panther instead of my child to Super Value Cargoline. Tall towers line the wall with metal and glass. They glitter and flash like miniature Disneyland. Have they always been there, I think? She squeals, Mommy, teddies! The postered claw machines are stuffed. National Geographic animals and trolls characters. Can we? Oh, can we? I hesitate and debate. Yes, this we can do. I have coins, 3. The wolf is too heavy. My expert touch grabs it 8 times in a row. It's too heavy, I explain, leaving off mention of con artists and capitalism. Silly machine, she agrees and grows smaller. I have 1 more coin. I stare at it, blessing it, begging it. If this year wasn't proof enough, I'm now convinced there is no God. I beg to no God. Please give the child the teddy. 1 coin, 4 chances. Try the wolf again. The fickle claw descends, engulfing grey fur. The wolf doesn't rise an inch before it slips and lands with a fluffy thud. Pick another, please. The tiger, she points. I despair, it's big. The tiger, I agree. Determined, desperate. The great betrayer closes in slow motion around a rich orange National Geographic tiger. It rises higher and higher. I hear her gasp. I can't look away while the claw creeps towards us. The tiger slowly slips. It hangs in brave defiance before it drops, bashes off the wind box, falls in and jumps up out of the dispensing drawer, up into her arms. I feel like I've won the lottery. When she gives the tiger her own name, I know she feels the same. Thanks. And since we're on the topic of the small girl, this poem is actually on display in the new Bandon Library, along with many fantastic poems from my cohort at the Cork County Council Poetry Collective. So if you're in Bandon and you're walking by the new library, there's some gorgeous poems in the window. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased, but this is my one that's down there. Sheep and Dragon. She cooks felt carrots in the washing machine while a polymer soup simmers on the stove. I shuffle to the door on cracking knees and knock, a hollow knock that puts stop to serious preparations. The door is opened by a smile that radiates semi-quavers of delight. My prize stands inside on a pile of stitches, scales of blackened toffee laced with white thread, wearing a sequined cat hat with embroidered whiskers. Only tall wings with wire armature declare golden dragon. Astride the drake is a woollyback scruffy from love, gender fluid and finished with fleece handles and zip. The shopkeeper negotiates senselessly and says, I cannot have a dragon or a sheep, for they take too much care. First, I must prove myself with a swimming dog for 3 coins. Coins she gives to me, then I give back to her. I am not to worry. The dog comes with an imaginary pool, but now she tires of my endless haggling and wants to watch television. Great. So I think that is well enough of me reading poetry. Thank you all for your patience and attention. I really appreciate it.
I think we really appreciate it. Would you entertain some questions, or do people have any sort of questions about poetry or about how you write poetry?
Absolutely. If anyone has any questions, I would absolutely be more than happy to. And if not, that's also good. We can...
I have a question.
Okay. Of course you have a question, Moza.
No, I just wondered if, because do you always, what excites you when you want to write a poem? Is it like the format, like the genre? Do you decide that first, or is it the subject matter?
You know, I suppose it comes in all different directions, but what I look for is, this feeling, oh, that's interesting. When you're reading something like, oh, that's interesting, so whether it be the form or just something that occurs to me, like I'm a big fan of, I have this huge notes document in my phone that, I'm washing the dishes, I'm out walking the dog, I'm doing whatever, and something might pop into my brain going, oh, that could be interesting. And I just kind of write it down. And to be honest, I don't go back to 99% of them. But every now and again, I will write down one that will like keep on coming back with that's interesting feeling. And then that's when I know that it's probably worth me tackling, because it's very good advice. But, many people probably told me, but, if you're not having fun writing, then people probably aren't having fun reading whatever it is you're writing, So I definitely kind of use that as my compass, that feeling of like, oh, this is interesting. But I think that the form sometimes, like often I'll just write down, notes or a loose idea or whatever is like bursting to come out. And then I will try and shape it to form afterwards. It's kind of rare enough that I'll decide the form before I actually start writing, if you know what I mean. Often I just write down a couple of notes and I'm like, oh, this might be sonnet size. I want an easy poem today. So it might be a sonnet, or if there's something repeating, then I might be like, oh, maybe this could be, good for a repetitive form, like a villanelle or a sestina or something like that.
But there is always a form. I mean, there's always, you decide always on a form.
Well, or I mean, it could be free verse. So I suppose like that is the form as well. Yeah. So sometimes they do come out that way. But yeah, I suppose, yeah, it's always an intentional decision at some point, is it going to be free verse or this strange thing or this traditional form? I am a big fan of the traditional forms, all right, I find free verse can be very overwhelming actually. So I'm like, oh, should they be, tercets or quatrains, or should it all be one big block of text, or, so I think it's nice to, be able to take a really studied, limited form like the sonnet or something like that and kind of work within those strictures.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you're. Yeah. Are you disciplined, Lauren? Do you write at a certain time every day, or just you set aside a certain, I must write in I must take this 30 minutes every day? Are you disciplined in that way?
I would desperately like to be disciplined, and I keep trying to engage strategies to keep myself more disciplined, but definitely what I notice is more like, kind of ebbs and flows. I'll go through like long sprints of being very productive and then long sprints of being very not productive. And unfortunately, I'm in one of the not productive writing sprints at the moment, but I'm hoping that, I don't know, there's just so much going on and there's so many exciting options. There's so many different projects, like writing poems, or I'm working on a novel out of my college thesis. But I find sometimes that if I'm working too hard on something, if I'm trying to force something, like for the month of November, I was really trying to force writing the novel. I wanted to do NaNo, which is National Novel Writing Month, that happens in November. I really wanted to do it on the novel. I thought that like I'll get 50,000 new words, I'll really be able to move the novel forward. But I found that I really was not feeling doing the novel, and it was torturous. I wasn't having fun. I didn't have that interested feeling. So I didn't really get anywhere fast with it. So I've decided now to like, I'm just going to put that aside for a while and work on things that, you know, do have that spark of interest. Because I think like, yeah, it is a fine line. You're walking between discipline to be able to finish a project through the hard editing and everything versus continuing to work on something that you believe in and that you love as well. So I find it very hard to find that line. But yeah, between like practically being in lockdown again now and having a small girl and all this sort of stuff, now my writing is just absolutely all over the place. I love deadlines though. Like I'm part of a bunch of workshops. I love those deadlines. I love submission deadlines. I submit to things that I have no hopes of really, you know, probably getting accepted into, but I like to use those submissions as deadlines, you know, so that kind of keeps me going. I'm well motivated by fear of deadlines and authority, actually.
Therese, you have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I have a comment and I would like to hear Lauren's response. I love your poetry. Love it. And I've loved it in the past too. You sort of remind me of my granddaughter who once said to me, you know, there's so much to learn. I just hope I can learn it all. She was so excited. I see you like as a real participant observer. You're very observant and a critical mind, but you are right in the thick of it and you drag us right in there with you. But I think what I love about your poetry is you have a kind of a comic response to things that need not be so heavy. Like there's another way to look at things. And I think that's a lot in your poetry, that kind of comic response. And I don't know if you see that in yourself, but I see it all the time. I wonder about that.
Oh my God, that's so lovely, Therese. Come on, more.
It's true.
Yeah, no. When I have my first collection of poetry, now I'll be on to you to write the blurb at the back for me. Thank you so much. But yeah, no, but I would agree. Like I have this comic reflex, and it was actually something that I was in doubt about like many times because I don't know, everyone else writing these serious, beautiful things, and I'm saying inappropriate things because, you know, I don't know, they just come out. But I've definitely learned to kind of embrace it. I suppose it's been a bit of like finding my voice, if you will. And, you know, when you're a slave to that interested feeling, you know, like I can't make my brain write about particular things. My brain tells me what it wants to write about. And, you know, my brain is this wannabe dark comic. So I definitely try and, you know, leave it do its thing, see what happens. But I love what you said about learning though, because like that is something that, you know, like I'm nearly into my 40th year now and I'm just after finishing college again. And if you would allow me, I would sign up for another course tomorrow and I would just do that until the end of time. I just find learning like so exciting and being able to make the connections, and it would be a very awful day for me if I woke up tomorrow knowing everything about writing. So I'm glad I'll be an eternal student forever, and that's where I like to be.
Yeah.
Great. Bernadette, you're muted. Bernadette? Okay. Pugnato fish. I'm not sure if I.
Yeah, this is a comedy thing actually. It's from my dessert, maybe another joke. Never mind. I forgot to change from the last session. I just wanted to. It's about comedy. My question is about comedy. So I agree that, and I admire this in your poetry, Lauren. They have this comic outlook, and I was thinking whether you were considering like stand-up maybe or something, because you would be big. You would be big really with this literature, because you know literature. You know about literature, so you wouldn't just be just a comedian. You would be like a comedian with a skill, and it's always a very good thing to have, because that brings that uniqueness to your comedy, and it would be really good. And you write about political things as well, like about this one about chores that you had. I don't remember the title, but it was a very powerful thing. And I mean, I think you, and that's really socially valuable. So have you ever considered anything like that?
You know what, I actually love comedy and I love stand-up comedy. And I don't know, I just never, like, I think that honestly stand-up comics are probably some of the best writers on the planet, you know, because I've tried hard to be funny sometimes and I might get a little chuckle, but you know, like writing those killer jokes, I think I'm gonna have to practice my craft for a long time before I kind of be up at that level. I think you can maybe sneak it a little bit more when you're being a poet, and you just kind of slide in a little bit of comedy. Nobody has any expectations. But if you're doing actual stand-up, then, you know, the crowd is there and they're there to be made laugh and there's a lot of expectations. So I'm not sure about that, but I think it will be a high honor indeed, and high craft to actually be able to, like, you know, write comedy as a you know, any sort of living or vocation.
All right.
I think you could do it in an instant. Stan, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, I was just interested in listening to you talking about, you know, working on multiple projects. And I suppose, I don't know, is it that I enjoy the same thing or that I suffer from the same thing? But are you like a child in a sweet shop, in the sense that the new project is the one that will kind of be the most attractive, or can you kind of put something to one side and come back to the later stage?
It's definitely a little bit of a mix, but yes, in general, definitely, like, I am the kid in the candy shop in that I always prefer my newest work, and it's not necessarily even a quality thing. It's just, it has a shine when it's new, you know. And then, but once I sit on the poem then for a couple of weeks or months, I often will decide I don't like it, you know. And I think it's a bit of a distortion. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's necessarily an actual assessment of the quality of it. So yeah, I definitely think I just get really focused in whatever, you know, the shiny thing that's currently in front of me, but not to great detriment as well. Like, there definitely are, you know, I am organized by nature, because otherwise I get nothing done at all. So I'm a mess most of the time, but I'm an organized mess. So I do try and keep going on you know, keeping a couple of projects working in parallel. But it is something that I need to be aware of. Like, you know, the novel that I'm working on at the moment, I'm so over that novel right now. But I can't tell you, is it because I'm just want a new shiny thing that's full of dopamine and new stuff? Or is it because the quality is actually lacking in this and I should be able to step away? And it's something that always stayed with me. It was a book on the creative flow. And they did, you know, loads of interviews with all sorts of creatives, you know, from around, you know, and we're talking like Nobel Prize winning physicists and all this sort of stuff, but what makes them different to their peers, you know, other physicists, for example, or writers or whatever it might be. And so many of them said something along the lines of, it's not that I have better ideas than my peers, it's just that I can tell which ones of my ideas are worth working on right now, instead of like wasting all this time on the bad ideas. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that I have that skill very well developed. And to an extent, I can't trust myself. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I am now with the novel. Like, is it that this maybe isn't a project I should be putting a year into, you know, and really bleeding over? Or is it just because I'm bored and, you know, I need to kind of move on to it? So sometimes I'll be able to tell which one it is, but right now on this, I'm definitely stuck. So my strategy will be I'm taking December off it, hoping that will give me some insight and perspective.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions, or shall we go to flash fiction in a flash? No other questions?
Just one point there to Lauren, and I love the discussion. But to some extent, I suppose we're like an aircraft that has got an undercarriage, and we like, from time to time, we kind of go back to that undercarriage. We have to have a look at it. We have to look at our earlier lives, and even the film you showed tonight on the teenage years, and what we saw ourselves in our time with our own teenagers. You know, you give a great insight into that. But that, I think that the new is very attractive, and new stuff, and we want to plow ahead. But there's no doubt about it that we should really value as well what has gone on, and we should look at it, because it can be in itself a teacher to us as well, you know, as to what direction, where we're going. If we don't know where we came from, we don't really know where we're going. Something like that.
Absolutely wise words there, Matt. And if there's anyone to know it, it's yourself. You're after publishing so many books yourself. It's you've had amazing achievements.
Thanks.
Okay,
Lauren.
Cool. Will we
Yeah.
will we get onto Flash?
Yes.
Let's
Please.
do it. Okay. I'll share my screen there now, guys. Now, can everybody see a slide saying flash fiction on it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, cool. Let me just take a sip of my tea and we'll get going.
What would you do if I said no?
If I said no, oh my God, I'd start sweating it and then Mosa would have to share the backup PDF.
Okay, so what colour is the slide?
Get away, you
I'm
trickster.
joking.
Mosa, mute him there, will you?
I will.
All right,
He's
cool.
colorblind. You didn't know that.
Oh, is he? Okay. Okay, so many of you, all of you probably know already what flash fiction is, but just bringing it back to basics, reminding myself as well. So we'll just do some basics. You know, what is flash fiction? The origin, some of the the defining characteristics of it, and then we're going to look at a few examples and then an exercise. So what is flash fiction? Flash fiction is a genre of fiction, and it's basically a very short story, or in some cases, a very, 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 very short story. So while there's no set word count that separates flash fiction from traditional short stories, because all this genre stuff ultimately is kind of made up, but typically flash fiction stories can be as short as a few words, and short stories typically run for several pages. So a rule of thumb is about 1,000 words. If it's a self-contained story under 1,000 words, you're often able to submit it to flash fiction story sites and magazines and competitions, and there's a load of those. If you're on that scene with poetry, there's just as many for flash fiction, and the two can work nicely together. So if you do write poetry, you might consider having a go off flash fiction. And flash fiction is also known as flash, sudden fiction, short stories, microfiction, or micro stories. So you could use all those words to Google various places that you might be able to submit if you do write any. So 3 characteristics of flash fiction. The first one is brevity. So flash fiction compresses an entire story into the space of a few paragraphs. Now, there's a lot of kind of general rules or general stuff inside here. And as myself and Mosa were talking about earlier, all these rules are made to be broken. We're really just talking about, and for every one of these rules, you can find out probably 100 exceptions. But we're just, in order to, break the rules, sometimes you have to learn the rules, and not that they're really rules, but they're just kind of general things. Flash fiction generally it has these characteristics. But yes, there are, we'll even look at some examples that even break some of these rules, which you'll see now in a few slides. But basically, a flash fiction, it's an entire story into the space of a few paragraphs. So as we said, they can range from 4 words, 6 words on the short end to around 1,000 words on the longer end. Kind of mostly anything over 1,000 words, you're getting into a kind of short story category. Flash fiction generally has a complete plot. So it is indeed a story with a beginning, middle, and end. And this is often what people will kind of focus on when you ask, how is it different from a prose poem or a vignette? So these can explore an emotion or a memory or a thought in kind of short order also, but they often don't have the plot or the same, story-driven beginning, middle, end sort of thing that will be generally characteristic of a flash fiction story. So surprise. Great flash fiction often incorporates surprise, and it's usually in the form of a twist ending or an unexpected last line, but not so much as a gimmick. The aim is to prompt the reader to think deeply about the true meaning of the story. So like one of the reasons why I like flash fiction so much is because like poetry, every word is working so hard. In flash fiction, there's so much that you can get out of it. Almost the shorter it is, sometimes the more the reader or the brain can get out of it, working on interpretation or, thinking about it. They can be genuinely very enjoyable and very surprising. So to go back in time to the origins of flash fiction, where did it come from? When did we start doing that? Well, back as far and probably earlier to the time of fables and parables, but it was popularized kind of in its current form in the 19th century, first by writers like Walt Whitman and Kate Chopin and Ambrose Bierce. And the best known flash fiction story from this time, and maybe ever, it's frequently misattributed to Ernest Hemingway, but with research, I can fairly confidently say, I think Ernest Hemingway was 10 when this actually first appeared in print. So pretty sure it was not him. We don't really know who it was. But anyway, the entire story is 6 words long. Simply, for sale, baby shoes never worn. So you can see that this is already breaking some of the rules that we already talked about. You know, is there a start, middle, and an end here? You know, is there a plot? Maybe not necessarily, but you can see how powerful these 6 words are, and the whole world of possibility that is unlocked in the reader's brain trying to interpret those 6 simple words. And the 6 words limit for flash fiction has become particularly popular. There's whole books like the Smith 6-word memoirs. They have numerous collections collecting all these 6-word memoirs. You know, a lot of famous people have been featured in those. They're a lot of fun to read. Very, very quick, obviously, at 6 words, but very deep as well, very interesting. So that was that Ernest Hemingway one, or the one that was misattributed to him. You know, that was kind of early 1900s. In the late 1900s, so when we're talking the 1980s, Robert Shepard and James Thomas published a set of anthologies of flash fiction called Sudden Fiction, and this spurred a resurgence of the form. We have a lot to owe to Robert and James for popularizing flash fiction in its current form today. And there's a bunch of other anthologies and, you know, really, really famous writers who play around in this field, not exclusively, like George Saunders and Stuart Dybek. They're both extremely famous short story writers, but you know, they also write even short stories, flash fiction as well. And the literary magazine Smoke Long Quarterly, that's really like the place to go for, you know, really great literary flash fiction. But as I said, there's a huge amount of places that publish it online and in books. If you have any to submit, you will find endless places. Now, some really famous examples of flash fiction, and just for the sake of the presentation, I really focused on the really short examples. But if you Google, you know, great flash fiction, you know, a lot of them you will get, you know, are kind of around, you know, 600 words, 750 words, up to the 1,000 words. There are very, very famous ones and popular ones. They're a bit longer. They just didn't suit this presentation. But I definitely recommend, if you're interested, to, you know, go and search those out. And they can be really satisfying because they're great stories, but they're really short. So, you know, you feel very productive reading them. You get, you know, in the space of reading an internet article about something random, you know, you can read one of these stories. So anyway, one of the most famous ones is Widow's First Year by Joyce Carol Oates. So the title is Widow's First Year, and it's extremely short at 4 words, and simply, I kept myself alive. So this story reveals a key trick of the flash fictionist's trade, and that is, it's also part of the poet's trade, let the title do heavy lifting. So in isolation, I kept myself alive might be construed as a feel-good mantra, but with the context of the title, Widow's First Year, it provides a morbid twist on the set-up punchline structure of a joke. So you'll see this one referenced a lot, you know, certainly in terms of the super short flash fiction. Now here's another example. It's called Give It Up by Franz Kafka. I forget exactly when this one was written, but it was definitely closer to the beginning of the 19th century than to the end of it. But it's a very famous example, and we're going to come back to this later when we're talking about our exercise. Give It Up by Franz Kafka. It was very early in the morning, the streets clean and deserted. I was walking to the station. As I compared the tower clock with my watch, I realized that it was already much later than I had thought. I had to hurry. The shock of this discovery made me unsure of the way. I did not yet know my way very well in this town. Luckily, a policeman was nearby. I ran up to him and breathlessly asked him the way. He smiled and said, "From me you want to know the way?" "Yes," I said, "since I cannot find it myself." Give it up, he said, and turned away with a sudden jerk, like people who want to be alone with their laughter. And so this piece, you know, just screams, you know, nihilism, and it's definitely in the genre of, you know, this postmodern despair. You know, that everyday man that he represents is lost. So he turns to an authority figure to help him out, and he does not find help there. So There's a lot of interpretations to this one, and it's also actually a translation as well. So you'll be able to find other translations if you look this one up online. But yeah, I don't know how many words this is, but as you can see, it's very short, but very powerful. There's a lot happening here. There is really an entire, story arc from beginning to end in just this one paragraph. Just take a sip of my tea. So before we get on to structuring the exercise, just 6 general tips for writing flash fiction. And yeah, a lot of these do apply to poetry as well, and other things. There's definitely not new information, but it's just stuff that generally has worked well when writing, super short stories. Use strong imagery. So make every single word count. Help your readers visualize as much as possible. Stick to one moment. Focus on one particular moment in time. Don't try to cram in more than one scene into a piece of flash fiction. If you are writing a piece of flash fiction and you find that you want more scenes, go with that as well. You don't know what you're going to come up with. Maybe you'll come up with something much longer. That's going to be a great short story. Like I know a lot of my writer cohort might start in one genre, might start writing a bit of prose, and it ends up as a poem, so definitely do follow wherever that leads you. Don't just shut down your ideas because it doesn't fit into the current genre. Just let the ideas go and then figure out what genre it fits into later. That's my motto anyway. Work with just 1 or 2 characters. Don't spread your story too thin. You just don't have the words in under 1,000 words to be getting that into that much detail for too many characters. I'm sure there are probably examples out there that are great flash fiction that probably do this, but just generally speaking, if you find yourself needing more than 2 characters or scenes, as we said, maybe you want to expand it into a different genre, maybe into the short story. Try first person point of view. So this is a very quick trick to create an instant connection to the reader, allowing you to express more in fewer words. Surprise your reader. Make sure to end your story on a different emotional note than the one you started on. And creating surprise is what flash fiction is all about generally. Take the reader on a journey, no matter how short. And as we've seen, some of them have been 4 words short. So there is a lot you can do with little. Make good use of your title, like we saw with Joyce Carol Oates' flash fiction, Widow's First Year. That story makes absolutely no sense, really. It does not do what it is designed to do without that title. So now the moment you've all been waiting for, we'll get into the flash fiction exercise. And we'll take a little sidestep to kind of understand the framework. So Gustav Freitag's Pyramid. Now, all of you are probably familiar with this concept, even if you don't kind of remember right now Freitag's name. It is a very, very well discussed common concept in playwriting and movie writing, novel writing, short story writing. And it is devised by Gustav, who was a 19th century German playwright. And he took a real deep dive into the dramatic structure, trying to outline the key steps or general steps in successful storytelling. And he was looking at it in terms of drama, but it applies to all storytelling. And a lot of writers love to hate on the Freitag's Pyramid. And I definitely understand why, because just the thought of having a formula to go about any sort of artistic action can kind of seem, a little off. And there's so many exceptions to the rule as well. So many wonderful works that if they, made their work fit into this pyramid, it wouldn't be what it is. It wouldn't have been so special. So again, just like we were talking about the general rules for writing flash fiction, this is just a helpful concept. It's just language that we're putting around generally how a story goes, so we can kind of understand the individual components, and then with that understanding decide if we want to keep them or not inside in our own work. So according to Freitag anyway, the 7 key steps in successful storytelling are exposition, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, and denouement. And we'll see a little graph of that here, so it's a bit easier to understand. So here, if you start at the bottom left with 1, so this is the exposition. This is where we set the scene and establish your protagonist's background. And then that first red dot, that's the inciting incident. So now we're introducing a problem that affects our protagonist and sets off the chain of the events of the story. So from the inciting incident, we rise up one side of the pyramid in what's called rising action, otherwise known as the plot thickens. So your protagonist problem gets more complicated. Sometimes here, there might even be a cycle of try, fail, try, fail, try, fail. So the protagonist might, try a solution, fail at the solution, and then they try a bigger solution and they fail at that bigger solution. And that keeps on going all the way up to the top of the pyramid where we're at the climax. So this is the tension in the story reaches a fever pitch. This is the moment that, you're reading the first 3/4 of the book to kind of get to, the bomb is literally about to explode and James Bond just swung in, that kind of moment. And then after the climax, if we follow down the other side of the pyramid for number 4, the falling action. So this would be, show the result of the climax, what might happen when after James Bond, swings in and turns off the bomb. 5, we have the resolution. Your protagonist emerges victorious or not. And often that's where modern storytelling these days kind of ends. So the denouement it's definitely still around. The denouement basically means like what happens after, and it was very popular in storytelling of an older tradition, of an older generation, where especially the moral sort of books where you might have the resolution, but you might have an additional then 20 and 30 pages that tells you what happens in the rest of the life of those characters and what they learned, how their morals changed and all that sort of stuff. So often now the resolution and the denouement get kind of squashed in together, and that's basically the new normal. That's where your story is ending, which is often a new beginning in and of itself. So now we were talking about Give It Up there by Franz Kafka. So just really quickly, we are going to just have a quick look at how this short story breaks down with Freetag's Pyramid. And this is a bit of, I won't say it's not a bit of an art, but it is definitely subjective. So, where I have chosen, the exposition of the rising action, like you might very well, and with very good argument, might put it on a different sentence. But it's just to kind of give us an idea of what's going here. So the exposition here was, it was very early in the morning, the streets clean and deserted were setting the scene. The inciting incident was that he was walking to the station and looking at the clock, he realized that it was already much later than I had thought. So we've introduced a challenge, some sort of problem. Next, the rising action. So, the plot thickens. The shock of this discovery made me unsure of the way. Now we are late and we are lost and we're walking to the station to do something important. So, things are getting more tense. So he's unsure of the way. It's later than he thought. This is all building up to him finding the police officer and asking him, asked him to show the way. So this is our climax point here, is when he actually gets to the police officer and asks the question. The falling action. So things are beginning to tie up. We're nearly getting to our resolution. What is happening immediately after the climax? Well, what is the result of that climax? And here we have the police officer saying, give it up, give it up. And then finally, we've got the resolution with the denouement kind of squashed in, because the denouement really doesn't flash fiction, we're looking for short words, and the denouement is is traditionally, kind of a much longer bit at the end, about a very detailed resolution at the end. So I think just like squashing those together for flash fiction kind of makes most sense, and just focus on resolving what's right here in front of us, not what happened for the rest of the life of the characters. And here our resolution is, that's what happened. The policeman turned away with a sudden jerk because he is a jerk. And, society is bleak, is the message that we're getting here from Franz Kafka. So I hope that made sense. I know I went through it quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to send around this deck after the call if anybody wants it. But the flash fiction exercise that I have for you is, this exercise you can do and actually literally get a flash fiction story straight from this exercise. or it could be an exercise that you might use to, you know, get the creative juices going, get some ideas going. It could even be a planning exercise for, you know, a much bigger project. But in terms of, you know, flash fiction today, your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to write a 5-sentence or, you know, 5-section, but start with sentence, 5-sentence flash fiction. So, and here is a kind of like you know, a fill it in template, if you will. So exposition, what's your sentence? Rising action, what's the sentence? Climax, falling action, resolution. The ideas for each part, for each one of these key moments in, you know, in the storytelling arc, you know, just write 1 sentence of those and see, can you get a flash fiction story out of it? And when I've used this for myself in the past, what I have found is it was kind of more of a planning thing. So I wrote my 5-sentence story, and then I might have added a couple of more sentences in 1, or I might have added a couple of more sentences in 4, not necessarily in all the sections. But yeah, you know, start simple, start with just the 1 sentence, and then expand it, you know, as you need to expand it. And it might expand to 200 words or 1,000 words, or, you know, a short story. Ultimately, it's just an exercise, and it's just for fun, and it's just to get your creativity going. But wouldn't it be wonderful if you got a, you know, flash fiction story out of it? So I think what we're going to do now is we are going to take a break for 10-15 minutes. Mosey, you can correct me, but I will leave that slide up on screen. I think might be a good idea in case you want to look at it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Lauren. That was really, really interesting. And I'm glad the flash fiction exercise is quite brief, 5 sentences, everyone can do it. The idea is to have the open mic after this. Margaret or Regan is going to facilitate it, so you can put your name in the chat as usual. And the idea is to do, you know, you can read your flash fiction story at the open mic. We don't have a competition, or you can read something entirely different. And I'll see you in a quarter of an hour, like 5 minutes to 10 or something like that.
Great, thank you.